Joining us now is David McCall, International President of United Steelworkers. David, good to see you. Bloomberg reported,
thank you for having me.
You bet. Bloomberg reported back in November that some rank and file members were worried that the deal could fall through and that they'll eventually lose their jobs. What do you say to them today?
Well, first of all, U.S. Steel is a profitable and viable company. The CEO of the company, when the CFIUS committee first put out some concerns and what the risks were in the merger, decided he'd start making some threats about shutting down facilities, particularly in the Mon Valley here in western Pennsylvania. Right here in this facility, and these facilities here in western Pennsylvania, we make the most high-quality hot bands in the steel industry and at the cheapest price. So it's just an irresponsible threat that he makes. And, of course, it scares our members. It scared a lot of political leaders as well. But as I said, U.S. Steel is a viable and ongoing concern.
So you've had no conversations today with any of your members who are worried?
I've had lots of conversations with our members today, but none of them have raised an issue about being concerned about their jobs being lost because this merger has been rejected by the president. I mean, for a year now, the CFIUS committee has reviewed what the real risks are. They've spent a lot of time with the companies, both U.S. Steel and Nippon, letting them go back and forth trying to mitigate the issue. The fact is that Nippon's plan was to eventually shut down virgin blast furnace-made steel in this country and move it to a new 3 million tons down in Arkansas in electric arc furnaces. That jeopardizes our jobs, but more importantly, it jeopardizes national security in that much of the steel that's needed for infrastructure and for critical supply chains can't be made in EAFs. It has to be made in blast furnaces.
I am curious, David, as to what you're preparing for now. Nippon Steel has made it clear that they plan to challenge it. Kind of interesting, though, that they're not necessarily going directly after the Biden administration itself, but rather really trying to sort of, I guess, maybe pick away at the contours of the CFIUS process itself, which I guess gives it credence heading into a new administration with a whole new group of people that may view this deal differently. Are you prepared for that?
Well, I'm not prepared for it because I don't think there's any appeal from what the president's decision is. When CFIUS isn't able to reach a consensus, it's up to the president. The president has rejected it. But in terms of the next administration, President Trump has said on multiple occasions that he recognizes as well that the merger would be at risk for national security issues. So he's been publicly open about that on several occasions, and as far as I know, there's nothing that's changed his mind to that.
You refer to U.S. Steel as being a viable company, and certainly on paper, I don't think anyone could dispute that. But there's a reason why we got here. You've been in this business a long time. I started my career decades ago covering the steel industry. Western Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania is not the hotbed that it was. Same thing, you go to Illinois, all those steel plants that were there in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they're breweries and apartment buildings. What is the future of U.S. steel manufacturing? Can it just be one or two big players and that's it?
No, I don't think so. And frankly, the amount of steel that we're capable of making in this country today, we made 30 years ago. There's been a lot of technology changes. There is a lot of changes in the way we do the work, but there's also lots of changes in their equipment and in the materials and how we make steel. So we're very capable of making the steel that we need in this country. Actually, the demand is higher than our capacity. So shutting down facilities is not the way in which we can continue to grow the market.
David, Nippon Steel was going to invest anywhere between $1 and $2 billion in different areas. Have you talked to the current CEO of U.S. Steel, David Burritt, today about this?
I have not talked to David Burritt. I have spoken to the leadership from Nippon, and at some point in time, they finally started telling us what their intentions were on that capital investment, and most of it is for repair and maintenance.
Which are also important, right? Because you need to fulfill the contracts, right?
Oh, absolutely. But to just simply invest in what depreciation isn't growth in a company or isn't maintaining the new technology that it needs as the industry improves. So much of what U.S. Steel and Nippon's high-dollar public relations campaign has been over the last year is about the price that Nippon was offering on the stock. Obviously, $55 a share is much better than the $32 or $33 that it was trading at the time. So it was a good deal for investors and institutional investors. Clearly a good deal for the leadership of U.S. Steel in terms of their change in control bonuses, but not good for workers and not good for the American national security.
I know there were some questions about the investment promises that Nippon Steel were making, and whether they were rock solid or maybe a little hollow. There is a question, though, about that money, and this gets to Alex's point here. Do you think we will see that type of investment in these facilities, either through U.S. Steel or maybe even the government or some other entity other than Nippon going forward?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, in our collective bargaining agreements, we bargain for capital investment as part of our overall strength in making sure our plants are modernized. I mean, that's where our job security comes from. And look, as far as we're concerned, stockholders deserve a fair return on their investment, and that ought to come in dividends and in growth capital on their stock. Certainly, the workers deserve the long-term security as well. We work on our jobs for decades, not for a couple of weeks at a time. Mm-hmm. So it's important that we maintain the facilities and that we keep them going. We're the most productive steel workers in the world by any measure. Yeah. So we can compete anywhere, anytime.
Just one final question, and forgive me if this is a dumb question, David, but the sentiment that you're expressing about this deal being blocked, is that sentiment truly shared all the way down the rank and file, all the way down to the bottom?
Oh, I'm sure there are many of our members who are concerned about the irresponsible threats that some of the management have made. I recognize that. But over the course of this last year, we've spoken to our members on multiple occasions. We've talked to the local union leadership. We've done great membership updates and meetings with them. And obviously, there's some people that's always going to be afraid of what some irresponsible threats have been made. But the vast majority of our members understand what Nippon's plan is to eventually transfer our work to electric arc furnaces and shut down our current facilities. And that's not good for our members. That's not good for national security.
All right, David, we're going to check in with you in a few weeks or months here to see how things are going. Appreciate you taking the time for us. David McCall there is the international president of the United Steelworkers. On the back of that news, that outgoing President Joe Biden has indeed blocked that $14 billion sale of U.S. Steel to Japanese rival Nippon Steel. Nippon saying that it plans to appeal part of that decision, specifically involving the CFIUS ruling.